They say you don't feel the hunger after a while. They lied. You feel it change. First it gnaws, then it whispers, then it listens. By the fourth week, even your shadow starts to look heavier than your body. It bends differently, like it's tired of following you, or like it's waiting for you to stop moving first. We were 6 in the house when the grain ran out. By the end, only 3 of us still sat near the fire, though the fire was long gone. It wasn't even that cold. That's what frightened me the most. It should have been freezing, our shutters broken, our roof patchy, the snow thick and wind sharp. But there was no chill. Just this, thick stillness, as if the air had forgotten how to move. The animals were the first to go, not by hands. They just stopped making sound, then stopped being there at all. The goat, Tilda, one morning, her tether was still fastened to the post, but the rope frayed through like something had chewed it, or pulled until it snapped. But there were no tracks in the snow, only a slight depression where her body had slept, like even the weight of it had been erased. Mother boiled rags for broth, added crushed bark to give it color. We didn't ask what else was in it. Not when Father's belt went missing from the hook behind the door. I chewed on something once that tasted like burnt wood and salt. My jaw ached for hours. It wasn't bark. I didn't ask. I stopped looking in the pot when I ate. By the second week, the world outside had gone soft and gray. People from other farms didn't pass our gate. The road disappeared under white and silence. Only the crows remained. Fat ones. Too fat. Perched on the well's crossbeam, their beaks full and shiny. Watching. Always watching. My brother said they were stealing from graves, but the ground was too frozen to dig. Then he said, maybe the ground isn't frozen anymore. I asked what he meant. He didn't answer. He just stared at the spot under the tree where Father had buried the sack of oats last spring. We tried to dig it up 2 days later. There was no sack, just soft earth, and a small pile of feathers, pressed flat like parchment. That night, I heard tapping. Not on the window, not at the door. From underneath. A slow, patient sound. 3 taps. Pause. 2 more. I counted. Then it stopped. My sister said it was the wind shifting the beams. But wind doesn't count. And wind doesn't stop when you ask it to. I didn't sleep that night. Just listened. To the house breathing around us. To the groan of old wood. To something too quiet to name. The next morning, my mother was sitting by the hearth with her hands in her lap. Not moving. Not shivering. Her eyes open, but not seeing. I asked what was wrong. She said, the hunger is in the walls now. And then she smiled. But her lips didn't move. Only her eyes. My brother refused to eat that day. Said the broth tasted strange. That it smelled sweet. He said things that smell sweet when they shouldn't are wrong. He left a bowl untouched. My sister stared at it for hours. Later, I found her licking the inside of the pot with her hands. That was when the tapping started again. But now it echoed. Like more than one hand. Like more than 2. They tapped in rhythm, and I could feel it in the soles of my feet. The floorboards trembled slightly, like a breath trying not to be heard. I put my ear to the wood. I heard something wet, something slow, not chewing, but grinding, like teeth against stone, and once a sigh. That's when I realized the hunger wasn't inside us anymore. It was underneath, and it was listening back. The floor creaked differently after that night. Not like before, when old beams settled or someone shifted weight near the hearth. This was softer, intentionally quiet, as if the wood didn't want to be heard anymore. I stopped sitting on the floor. I sat in corners now, knees to my chest, eyes on the cracks between the boards. The next day, the snow outside turned yellow. Not everywhere, just in strange patches near the trees. My brother said it was the ground bleeding slowly. I didn't laugh. There was nothing left in the cupboard. Nothing but a wooden spoon and a pot with scratches so deep they looked like writing. My sister traced one line and whispered, "It says open." Then she smiled too long. Her lips stuck to her teeth. I didn't answer. I watched the crows. They were closer now, sitting on the roof in pairs, waiting. Sometimes they leaned toward each other, as if sharing secrets. Their feathers didn't move in the wind, even when it blew. That's when my brother started sleepwalking. I'd find him in the doorway, eyes open, but empty, his hands twitching, his mouth chewing at the air. One night I followed him. He walked barefoot through the snow, past the well, into the woods. I called to him once. He didn't hear. When I reached him, he was standing over a hollow in the ground, one I didn't recognize. Inside was the goat's tether, tied in a perfect circle, like someone had carefully arranged it, as if it wasn't pulled, but placed. He turned to me and whispered, She fed them. And then he laughed. Not loud. Not manic. Just enough to let the air know he was still willing to be part of it. After that, he stopped speaking. Only stared. At walls. At spoons. At my fingers. He stopped blinking too. The tapping returned. Only this time, it was in the ceiling. Same rhythm. Slower. 3, pause, 2. But softer. Closer. Like it had learned my heartbeat. One night, I covered the floorboards with ashes from the hearth. A thin layer. Just enough to see if something moved. By morning, the ashes were gone. But the boards were damp. Like something had breathed on them all night. I don't remember when my sister stopped being my sister. Not really. She still sat beside me. Still blinked and moved and coughed and cried. But her eyes never quite found mine anymore. And her hands shook even when they were empty. She whispered to herself in a voice too flat to be praying. She chewed at the hem of her dress until the fabric turned black at the edges. One night, she stood and said, "It's feeding time." Then she opened the door and walked into the snow. I didn't follow. I watched the door until it swung shut. In the morning, her footprints led halfway to the woods. And then stopped. Just stopped. Like she had vanished mid-step. Or like something had reached up and pulled her down through the snow. That night, I bolted the door. I lit the last candle. I closed my eyes and tried to remember what bread tasted like. Not the shape. Not the color. The feel of it against my teeth. I couldn't. The only flavor left in my mouth was iron and dust. And something sweet. Too sweet. The kind that lingers behind your nose and burns your eyes. That's when I realized I hadn't cried in days. My skin was too dry for tears. Even my breath had turned shallow and quiet. Like I didn't want to disturb the thing that had taken up residence in the house with me. I stopped talking. I stopped eating. I just listened. To the walls. To the beams. To the soft slithering beneath the hearth. Until one day someone knocked. Not tapped. Knocked. I opened the door. A man stood there. Wrapped in wool. Face wind-bitten and flushed. A cart behind him filled with sacks. He looked shocked when he saw me. "Child," he said. "You're still here." I nodded. He looked past me into the house. Then he turned pale. He didn't ask where my family was. He didn't ask my name. He just handed me a crust of bread and said, "Eat this slowly." Then he walked away. The crust cut my mouth when I bit it. But I didn't care. I chewed like it was a memory I didn't want to lose. And behind me, the house stayed still. Too still. Like it had paused. Waiting. Watching. But I didn't step back inside. I sat on the threshold. And I waited for the crows to leave. They never did. They just tilted their heads. And waited too. Just like the shadow of my own body. Longer now than it should have been. Stretching into the doorway behind me.